In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbartis, Lizzy Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, the podcast where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Chad Robinson. Joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Lizzy Haynes. Lizzy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, thanks. How about you? Excited to be here.
I am clearly under the weather. We are going to edit all kinds of things, but I will leave in the fact that I have messed up Lizzy's name about 6 times. So my little 6-year-old petri dish brought home a unknown disease that tests haven't figured out. So I am recovering. If I sound a little more nasally, pardon me for that. But I am excited. This is my excited voice because we have a new guest. Lindsay, however you pronounce the last name too, because Russell has written it many different ways. We have a guest from Lizzy. Joining us today is Leah Weisman from Louisville, Kentucky. How are you doing, Leah?
Hi, Chad. I think I'm doing a lot better than you are, but
yes.
I'm glad to be here.
that is any given day. Well, Leah, we like to play a game before we get into our movie of the day, so we ask a couple of warm-up questions. We are going to be covering a movie with lots of fantasy and fairy tales. What is something from a movie that isn't real, but you wish was? It could be a place, artifact, object, plant, animal, something else.
The Time Turner from Harry Potter for 10 Alex. Thank you.
I wish I were nerdy enough to know what that is. I don't get into this.
Oh my gosh, you don't like
know
it.
what that
I
is?
forgot. You don't watch Harry Potter.
It's basically
yes.
just this little charm that they can use to go back in time.
Okay, all right, awesome.
I can also say the TARDIS if that makes you feel better. Does that help?
I don't watch Doctor Who either. I'm having to turn in my nerd card right here.
I know. About nerded you in the first 5 minutes.
Yes. DeLorean. You want a DeLorean.
Okay, I want a DeLorean first.
Lizzy, what do you want?
I put Narnia. To me, I would absolutely love to have a secret world that I can reach in the back of my closet where I can meet Mr. Tumnus and see God depicted in the form of a giant lion and possibly avoid the White Witch, but altogether I'm here for a magical land in my closet.
Excellent.
Maybe you really want Turkish delights, but I've actually eaten them now, and I do not want them.
No, they're not that good.
No.
Oh, that's disappointing. That was the first thing that came into my mind was Turkish delights, and then Reepicheep. Gotta meet Reepicheep.
Yes.
I just want a Mogwai. Really, really badly. I want a little gizmo that I promise I will not feed after midnight, whatever that entails, whatever time zone rules, and I will do my best not to get wet, ever. But I want gizmo. So,
It's a pretty dangerous choice. You never know what you're going to get with one of those, but they are very cute.
yes, they're adorable. What is the last movie you saw, Leah?
Smile.
Excellent. We've talked a lot about that. Did you like it?
I did. It was a solid movie. It's not something I think I would rewatch like Candyman, but I appreciated it.
You've got to watch Candyman at least 5 times.
Yes.
Lizzy, what's the last movie you saw?
I watched Candyman. My kids were napping, and I don't know why. I just decided I was going to go for it. I wanted to watch the newer 2021 version, and I'd already seen it before. I would define that. I know Russell at one point was trying to get me to define what cozy horror was, and I would say the Jordan Peele version falls under that category, where it's not very scary, it's thrilling, and then I can move on with my life after. So it was a great cozy horror movie for an 11 o'clock in the afternoon watch.
I love cozy horror.
Cozy horror.
Yeah.
Yes, things to watch while your children sweetly sleep.
That's right.
To each their own. Yeah, I watched a superhero movie. I saw the new Black Adam. I'm a big fan of the comic book character, very familiar. So the movie didn't go over as well for me. This is more of a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson type character. Dwayne plays himself, and that's cool too. It's a fun popcorn flick if you're deep into the lore and familiar with Shazam, Captain Marvel, those type movies, not the Marvel version of the DC. This may not hit the right note for you, but if you're just looking for an enjoyable film, I mean, The Rock's always a good time, so check that out.
It's always hard when you're a big fan of the reading material.
Yeah.
It's common to be disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, just give him the ears, if nothing else. Like, I understand The Rock's bald. You don't have to give him the weird hair. just the ears. It's not too much to ask.
Did he do the big eyebrow move at any point during the movie?
He did not give the people's eyebrow. I mean, there was a slight raise, but there was plenty of smackdown going on, so
Yeah.
I will give him that. Lizzy, what movie are we doing today?
We are doing 2001's Shrek.
Okay, somebody once told me about this movie. It stars Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz, and John Lithgow. Release year, Russell is setting me up for failure. It says 2005. This is clearly 2001. And I'm now curious if any of this other information is correct. I'm going to read it anyways because it was provided and it's in front of me. $60 million budget. Grosses $267 million. Placed in the box office that year is number 3. It is behind The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. I can't believe that these were the same year. And it places ahead of Monsters, Inc. What a year. And the number 1 movie is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. IMDb gives this a 7.9%. Rotten Tomatoes, critics like it. 88%, and the audience likes it a little more. It's at 90%. It is an Academy Award winner. I saw this, it's the first ever Academy Award winner for Best Animated Feature. It's nominated, it was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, Golden Globes nominee, Best Motion Picture for a Musical or Comedy, BAFTA for an Adapted Screenplay, 6 other nominations for Best Film. Eddie Murphy became the first actor to ever receive a BAFTA nomination for voiceover, Best Visual Effects, Sound, and Music. And the awards keep coming. AFI 2008, Top 10 Animated Movies at number 8. And nominated for Top 100 Movies, and 100 Heroes and Villains for Shrek, and 100 Songs for Smash Mouth's cover of Neil Diamond's I'm a Believer. This is also, and I have to throw this out there because this is just strange, is the 3rd movie on this podcast we've covered that heavily features Smash Mouth's All-Star.
We are millennials, right?
Yes.
We come by it honestly.
We are short the Digimon movie, but we have covered Rat Race and Mystery Men. But this is the movie that really, really makes Smash Mouth's All-Star just into the cultural meme that it is today.
Chef's kiss.
Yes, exactly. Leah, we will start with you. Had you seen 2001 Shrek? If you did you like it back then? What were your expectations coming back to it now?
Oh, yeah. I saw this in the theater. I was probably 12? 11 or, 12. I just recall finding all the crass jokes so funny. I remember sitting in like 7th grade math, like repeating some of the jokes. I remember we all thought that the Muffin Man interrogation thing was just like elite comedy.
It still is, yes.
We thought that was just incredibly funny. So loved it as a kid. I've come back to this movie many times. If it's on TV, it's like one of those that you kind of just will sit down and watch. You know, that's like up there with Forrest Gump for me. You can sit down and watch it. I mean, you know it well enough. You can sit down at any point and really enjoy it. So when I came back to watch it a little bit more critically this time, I still really liked it. And I'm not gonna lie, I did laugh at the fart jokes, but
as we all did.
Just the different angles as an older person, and you get kind of tired of the cliches, and this was just such an epitome of a fractured fairy tale, and the whole story with Fiona, really resonated with me as a grown-up person who found love, and it's, it maybe is not like a Prince Charming situation where you do what you're supposed to do, but yeah, still loved it.
So you're saying the movie is like an onion?
It's like an onion. It has many layers, or like a parfait.
Yes, not a parfait.
Everybody likes a parfait.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie, I actually don't like parfaits, but I love that line. I really appreciate that.
I do love a good onion, though.
I love an onion.
Yeah.
Lizzy, have you seen Shrek? And if you did you enjoy it like you love a good onion?
Yeah, yes. I have a really similar story to Leah. We're the same age, so I was in the exact same position as far as being in middle school, going and seeing it in the theaters. I was coming off of the high of Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, and I remember, I still to this day have inside jokes with my family about a certain Scottish hitman. I'm not going to say his name just because I don't know if it's child friendly, but he's large and he was born out of wedlock.
Yep.
and so we absolutely love, still truly to this day, we're like, get in my belly. And so we loved that movie. And so when we saw the previews for Shrek, we knew we were going to go see it. And it honestly completely rocked our world. It took over the cultural zeitgeist. I just remember sitting in class and everybody had memorized the little puppet, welcome to
Yes.
and I actually remember the line of really, really kind of got added into our regular vernacular, and it really truly took over our cultural zeitgeist. At that particular time, I'm 12 or 13, so I'm big in my butterfly clip phase, and you're at that cusp where you're still young enough to really appreciate fairy tales, but old enough that you want something that still has a little grit to it, that you can, makes you feel a little bit older. You're craving kind of more teenage things at that time. So this was the perfect hybrid, I think, for kids our age. And now as adult millennials, it's so much fun to go back and revisit. I hadn't watched it in a while, so to me this was just such a fun, nostalgic ride.
Well, y'all are just gonna keep throwing your youth in my face. I was older. I was in high school, so yeah, I saw this in theaters. I had friends that worked in theaters, and the best part of friends that work at theaters is you get in for free. And so we would just see anything and everything. Sometimes that's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse. But you know what? It was free. It was something to do. And this movie surprised me. I was a teenage boy, so animation was really not something that wasn't my go-to. So this kind of changed my opinion on a lot of things. It came up on the podcast very, very early on as one of our short list items, and Russell passed it over, and I'll be honest, I still haven't forgiven him. So I'm very grateful to Leah for shortlisting this, so this huge burden can be lifted off the show. There's been this palpable tension between Russell and myself for missing out on Shrek. So we finally get to cover this. As far as holding up these movies, same with Austin Powers, you mentioned those. It does have the problem that it kind of parodies its time. A lot of the jokes are timeless, but then there's one or two you're like, yeah, it was funny in 2001 when we were much closer to the source material. So maybe some of that hasn't aged as well. And poor All-Star, I'm not going to hate on Smash Mouth too much, but that got memed into oblivion, so I feel a little bad. You hear the song, I'm I still kind of dig it, I'll defend it, but I understand if your your palm is on your forehead, just not making the shape of an L, just exasperated. So
yes. That song was everywhere. I know literally every single word to it, and
Same.
I actually called that the best supporting actor of this movie.
It truly is. Yes, it is. It truly. I mean, that, because I remember Smash Mouth had the Walking on the Sun. That was the song that I remember from them. And it seemed to me at least that they disappeared. And so I feel like, at least in my world, there was such a resurgence for them. And then I think it's kind of almost like that song that they use for the Friends theme song.
Yeah.
How it's like that band in and of itself probably would have disappeared had it not been for the fact that it was chosen for the sitcom Friends. No offense to that band.
Poor Rembrandts.
Rembrandts,
The
by the way.
Rembrandts, thank you. But I feel like this elevated Smash Mouth as a band and kind of cemented them into pop culture history.
Yeah, it's so weird. It was at the front of Mystery Men, which came out 2 years earlier, but that movie just was ignored by everyone except our podcast.
Incredible movie, though.
So, if you're a fan of Mystery Men or just fan of movies where All-Star is featured, check out that episode. I've got you covered.
It's a very niche interest.
Yeah,
Very much so.
this is the crowd we cater to. And if you don't want to hear any more spoilers, check out this movie if you haven't seen Shrek. It's a great movie. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then Lizzy's going to break down what happens. So we will be right back.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments, too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
And we're back. Last warning before Lizzy ruins this movie for you. If you haven't seen Shrek or just want to catch back up on what happens in the swamp, put us on pause, go check it out. Otherwise, Lizzy, break it down for us.
All right, so the movie opens with Shrek, a big green ogre living in a swamp, alone and enjoying his everyday life outside of the town of Duloc, a town in which fairy tale creatures and humans live in harmony, for now. Duloc's infamously vertically challenged leader, Lord Farquaad, has evicted all fairy tale creatures. While on a stroll alone in the woods, Shrek runs into a talking donkey who is desperate for companionship. Shrek tries his best to push Donkey away, but gives in and allows him to sleep one night in his swamp. Shrek then discovers that all of the evicted fairy tale creatures have found refuge in his swamp. A furious Shrek decides to confront Lord Farquaad and demand his swamp back. Meanwhile, Farquaad is eager to elevate his status from lord to king and must marry to do so. He chooses Princess Fiona as his bride-to-be and decides to host a duel to find the bravest knight to rescue her from the highest room of the tallest tower, guarded by a dragon. Shrek arrives in time for the duel and emerges victorious. Shrek and Donkey go on a quest to rescue Fiona, and upon doing so, Fiona is horrified to learn that her savior is an ogre, not Prince Charming, to sweep her off her feet and share true love's first kiss. The three of them journey back to Duloc, and along the way, Shrek realizes that he's misjudged the princess, as she belches, she eats rats, and she can hold her own in a fight. Shrek finds himself falling for her, and she for him, yet neither of them can admit their feelings. Upon nightfall, they camp out, and it's revealed to Donkey that Fiona has a secret. As a girl, a witch cast a spell upon her, and until she receives true love's first kiss, every night she herself will turn into an ogre. Donkey tries to convince her to tell Shrek, but she cannot bring herself to accept her truth. Shrek overhears their discussion and assumes that they are discussing him as a hideous ogre, not Fiona's own self-hatred. At dawn, Shrek has delivered Lord Farquaad to Fiona as they prepare for their nuptials. Before they say I do, Shrek has a revelation that although he cannot change that he is an ogre, he still has love to give, and he breaks up the wedding. Fiona is so overcome with Shrek's declaration that she rushes to Shrek, and they share true love's first kiss. It's then that she takes her true form as an ogre, and they live happily ever after.
So you could say he saw her face And now he's a believer.
She's a believer.
Love that song. So that's great. So yeah, Leah kind of touched on my first order of business here early on. Shrek opens so sweetly. It's this fairy tale book, and then it is literally flushed down a toilet, and we get a shot of an outhouse, and that's our tone from then on out. And Shrek is crass, and he's crude, and he's got a good heart, though. So when you first saw Shrek, and probably you're like me, your experience is coming off of maybe like a Lilo and Stitch or other Disney types that were coming out of the golden age of Disney, where we've Lion King, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. All of those are just boom, 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 all in the 90s. What did Shrek do for you as far as, like, was this a big shock?
I think it was definitely a big shock in the fact that thinking that it's going to be a fairy tale, and Shrek is really truly an anti-hero. And for me, at least, this is my first introduction to a character like that. He probably is why I have such an affinity for likable villains, in the sense that an ogre is traditionally considered a villain, but he has a heart of gold, and so you find yourself rooting for him. And you're right, and he's funny and he's gross, but that's kind of all a part of his charm at the end of the day.
You know, the interesting thing is, I don't think it bothered me so much as a kid because the fart jokes were funny. But what I noticed watching it this time was he wasn't necessarily motivated by any kind of altruism at the start. No. So everyone invades his swamp. He hates people. He doesn't want anyone to bother him anymore. You don't really know a whole lot about him. And he goes, and when he negotiates with Lord Farquaad, he doesn't negotiate on behalf of any other people that got displaced. He just says, you'll give me my swamp back as is, and you're going to remove everyone from it. And he's like, yeah.
And the squatters.
Yeah, and so he's
kind of more Borat, but yeah.
It's okay. We'll blow past it for you. I appreciate the effort. But yeah, definitely an anti-hero, but he kind of like finds his place, throughout the movie, which is kind of part of the true story, finding acceptance.
Did either of you grow up reading the books?
No. I did look up some of it. Supposedly the story is pretty different, but won a bunch of awards for the illustrations and stuff. Yeah,
I can remember second grade I did a book report on Shrek. So when this movie came up, it's very different. There is a talking donkey, but it's heavily featured in an evil witch, and they kind of thought about going that direction. But yeah, for me, like I said, this was just such a surprise for me. I expected sweet and saccharine, and it does have some of the sweetness to it, but it's got Eddie Murphy laugh out loud funny to it, and he did his shtick as Mushu in Mulan, but it's just different here. I don't think I was ever used to hearing jokes with, it's meant to sound like profanity, but they keep referring to donkey as an ass, and it comes up a lot, and you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of clever, you can do that. And just some of the humor, even with a Duloc, they're clearly going,
yes,
wipe your face,
stay off the grass, wipe your, and they all bend over face. Yeah, so there was a lot of that, even as a slightly older gentleman than you two ladies at the time. I was still pleasantly surprised. Like, oh, okay, I'm here for this. I'm here for the gross out. I like a character pulling earwax out of his ears and making a candle out of it. Like, that's the right kind of disgusting. And every hero needs a good sidekick. How many sidekicks are there that are better than Donkey? And is this Eddie Murphy's best role? Hot take there.
I don't know. Mushu was pretty good.
I love Mushu, I will agree, but I think Donkey is the best. I think he's just I'm all alone. No one here beside me. And like he has this one amazing line because he's so excited that Shrek has finally let him in. And I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, you and I can stay up and talk about manly things. And then in the morning, I'm making waffles. It's just so, and he is truly the antithesis of what Shrek is. Leah was saying that, Shrek is very self-serving and Donkey is the exact opposite. Donkey is sweet and loving, and he just wants companionship and friendship. And even later, when Donkey is the one that's offended by Shrek's behavior, he's very quick to forgive him. He's like, that's what friends do. We forgive each other. So in a lot of ways, he's kind of the Jiminy Cricket of the swamp, just acting as that conscience that Shrek lacks.
He's kind of like, I feel like every introvert gets assigned an extrovert in their life.
Yes.
And this relationship is like the epitome of that.
Yes.
And so Donkey drags him through a bunch of stuff, and it almost seems like through a series of pushing and being oblivious, he like forces his way in with Shrek. And I've definitely lived that life as an extrovert with being surrounded by introverts. Sometimes you just have to ignore the little ways they push you away, and eventually they let you in.
Just wear them down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a couple at our church that's very like this, and it just the sweet woman is at an 11 all the time, and she helps out with children, which is perfect for her, and it just reminds me of Donkey, of go, 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 go. And her husband is a very kind, caring person, but his energy is about where mine is most days. I'm like, how does this work? But I guess in Shrek form, it also works. Like, I love Donkey's energy. It's frenetic. It's his owner, or whoever that was, the old lady that's trying to sell him, she's like, he never stops talking. And, of course, and that's the least amount of lines he has while on screen until he starts flying. And he gets the Tinkerbell fairy dust and starts flying away. But yeah, as far as Eddie Murphy, he considers this some of his best work. And we covered Beverly Hills Cop. Love Beverly Hills Cop, but to me, he's Donkey. He's the voice of Donkey for me. I love this character so very much. I love the animations that they did. They said they modeled him after a dog and a rabbit. He does the little dog circle thing on the chair all the time before he lays down. It's just like, okay, he's the golden retriever that's happy when you're home, who's just assumed you'd been hit by a car or something when you're gone for 5 minutes. Like, he's just so excited for everything. There's that comedian that's like, my kids go nuts for bubbles. I wish I could get that excited about anything.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you could tell that there were parts they let him ad-lib too, like when he kind of charms the dragon.
Yeah.
And Shrek comes in and he's like trying to get her to stop. She's kind of harassing her a little bit, and he's like, wait, that's my tail. That's my personal tail.
That is unwanted physical contact.
Yes.
I watched this movie with Aaron. We both laughed out loud at that scene.
He did ad-lib the, oh, she's just as nasty as you, because Cameron Diaz had burped, and she drank a Coke, I think it was, and she burped on set, and that was his ad-lib of, oh, she's just as nasty as you. So yeah, I have to imagine there's just hours of unused Eddie Murphy lines, and I kind of want it. This movie, we'll talk about it later, but it has a lot of unused. It went through a lot, kind of like Frozen, where it's just reworked. A lot of tragic things went on behind the scenes before we get this great movie. What I do want to talk about now, though, is our damsel in distress, or maybe she's not so in distress. She just needs to be away from a dragon. It's Fiona. We find out she is really pretty capable. She is, well, I mean, she is. She's the female Shrek. We just don't know it yet. She is more than meets the eye. So were there any subtle actions? We'll start with you, Leah. Subtle actions or traits from Fiona that made her stand out to you, even as you're going back and reviewing this?
When you first meet her and she's kind of shocked that Shrek isn't treating her like the Prince Charming, ready to whisk her away, like sweep her off her feet and carry her down, and she's immediately like, stop, you're not following the rules.
You're not doing it right.
You're supposed to do all these things. And she goes, you didn't slay the dragon. He goes, it's on my to-do list. Let's go.
She's an Enneagram 1.
Yeah, so she's, you can tell that she kind of has this way she thinks her life is supposed to go. And I mean, we can all relate to that, where you're like, none of this is happening the way I wanted this to happen. But you kind of start to see her open up a little bit. I think finally when he throws her over his shoulder and he's like, we're going. I'm delivering you. And then Donkey is talking to her about love life stuff, and she's commiserating with him. You kind of see she actually does have a personality, and she's not just like a damsel in the tower. So probably when you get her out of talking about the thing she thinks is supposed to happen is when you start to see she's like a real person. Obviously, when she beats the crap out of Robin Hood and his merry men, you start to realize that she's pretty capable.
I love that Cameron Diaz got so into that scene because she just come off of, I think it was Charlie's Angels, but she was moving around and knocking things over, and she started yelling in Cantonese, and they're like, hey, you gotta dial that back a little bit.
I can see her doing that for sure. I think it was, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's Hollywood rumor that she had at one point in her contract, so like she has to do at least one dance move in like every single movie, because there's so many movies that she's in where she's dancing, like in The Mask and like every Charlie's Angels movie that she's in, and like literally, I mean, I could go like Something About Mary, you could go down the list. She's dancing in almost everything she does. So I am not surprised at all to hear that she got super physical with her animation. Yeah,
second movie she has where she falls in love with a guy with a green face.
That's right. That's right.
It's like I'd have 2 nickels, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Yeah.
Lizzy, what do you think of Fiona?
I loved her. I think in a lot of ways she's kind of the representation of the audience, in the sense that, we're all expecting a fairy tale. We've all already explained how in a lot of ways we had judged the book by its cover, going and expecting a traditional Disney-like movie. And so, in the beginning, she's like, I've got my, take this as a token of my gratitude. And she's going through the whole rigmarole of the Disney princess thing and acting as such. And then she slowly kind of unfolds that and realizes, okay, wait, like Leah said, she's like, this isn't happening the way that I wanted it to happen. And I'm so confused. And so in a lot of ways, she's kind of almost the personification of how the audience is supposed to feel as they watch the movie. And then as the movie progresses, you start to see her actual personality, and she's warming up to Shrek almost at the exact same time that we are. So for that, in that aspect of Fiona, I really enjoy her. As just a character, I think she's great because Shrek is the anti-hero and she's kind of the anti-princess, in the sense that, yes, she's beautiful and she acts in all the right ways in the very beginning, but who she truly is on the inside is messy, just like everybody else. And she's not afraid to hide that. At the very end, she just leans in. Yeah, she commits murder in this movie. You
do what you have to do.
Yeah, you see Robin Hood's head. I mean, this flew over my head as a kid, but you see Robin Hood like slam into that rock. And Aaron and I have this inside joke that anytime in a movie where someone falls or does anything that would result in death, we just look at each other and we're like, that's death right there.
Oh, and we do that too. Yeah. We were watching like Captain America and he's swinging that shield around. And we were like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Like death. That is death
right there. This is like a massacre right now.
Yes, you will not survive this head wound. And so like when Robin Hood slams down, Aaron and I are both like, that's death.
Well, I was talking about the bird's mother, but yes.
Oh, yes.
She was more upset about the exploding bird.
Yes, that scene is a little screwed up, I will admit. I mean, that's a little much. And then she cooks the eggs.
Right? Yeah, babies.
That's like how she is, though. You think she's one way, this beautiful, lilting song of a person, but she's actually aggressive and grating, and she will eat your eggs after you're dead.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they wouldn't have thrived anyway without a mother.
That's right, so might as well eat them. This movie is very cruel to animal mothers. I don't know if you noticed, but the 3 bears
Yes.
Mama Bear is dead too. She's a rug.
Oh, yeah.
And Lord Farquaad's like zebra animal bachelor pad.
They blow up the frog and the snake and give them to each other as balloons. Brent and I had this running theory this whole movie, by the way, because at the beginning, Shrek does something, and I think Donkey tells him he's got bad breath. And Brent was like, what do you think's in his breath? And I was like, methane, like making a joke. And then when they blow up the balloons and the balloons like float, Brent was like, your methane theory holds up.
Yeah.
I was like,
Who knew?
You go. A secret fact for you.
There you go. Swamp methane. So it checks out. And no fairy tale is complete without an awesome villain. And this has to be one of my favorite named villains, which went over my wife's head forever, and I had to explain to her what Lord Farquaad was trying to be. It's not only a great name, but he's mimicking other great parody villains like Dark Helmet from Spaceballs. He's got the compensation issue, a stature
man syndrome
problem. Yes. Which is fantastic because they got John Lithgow to play him, and John Lithgow is 6'4". He's one of the tallest actors in all of Hollywood. So John Lithgow's like, is this your idea of a joke? Like, was this written because I'm so tall? And I couldn't find if that was the original one. But a lot of times movies like this really hinge on having a good villain or someone that you can really hate. Is Farquaad a good foil to Shrek?
Yeah. I mean, he's everything that Shrek isn't. He's short. He's haughty. He likes everything clean, perfect, and exact. He wants to be worshipped by everybody. And Shrek wants to be left alone. He's disgusting. And at the end, he's caring and he's got a heart of gold. So totally different motivations from every aspect, for sure.
Yeah, I think that, looking at him as a villain, because you honestly, I feel like don't get enough time with him to really be able to absorb him in the way that I wish I could. But what made him such an amazing villain and so perfect was not even so much his motives. It was just the way that he went about things, his mannerisms, his overall personality, like him talking to the mirror, choosing his bachelorettes, and of course, like the infamous ginger bride scene. And he's just, John Lithgow played him so brilliantly because I would assume that John Lithgow is actually a very confident man, because I think it would take confidence to play insecurity. And he plays his insecurity so perfect. He really does personify that little man syndrome so epically. It's just a 10 out of 10. Like, he's hilarious. The only problem I ever found with this movie was that there wasn't enough Lord Farquaad.
John Lithgow he's a gift.
He is.
Always.
He is a Renaissance actor. I absolutely adore him.
From Third Rock from the Sun, hilarious.
Yes.
Harry and the Hendersons, to
Dexter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the character he plays in Dexter is just so
epic.
Different, but he's an incredible actor, but he's so funny.
Yeah, I was a big Third Rock from the Sun fan when this came out, so hearing that voice, I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. Dick Solomon is just an all-time great character.
So funny.
Yes.
So Lord Farquaad is just, he's so, I guess, self-conscious that he's got to control everything around him. I love his people going around with little cue cards, telling everyone what to do.
Applause.
Yes.
It was like touched silence or whatever.
Yeah.
Reverence.
Yeah, and just even after Fiona is transformed, he's like, okay, whatever. I'm taking the crown. We're married. It's fine. Go ahead, kill her. Whatever. Like, I'm the king now. I've gotten what I wanted. It wasn't so much. We do get that uncomfortable scene, and I'll be honest, I did not pay attention. I've seen this movie probably a dozen times. I had no idea until now. There's a clear implication that he's having a little personal moment.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna ask you guys about that when he asked the mirror to keep playing the recording of her.
Yeah.
I rewound it and watched it like 3 times, and I was like, Brent, do you think he's doing? And Brent was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's pitching a tent, for
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
he lifts his sheet and looks down. And I was like,
and smiles.
wow, I have missed that up till now. I mean, it is his
very subtle.
his little love nest or whatever. He's got the zebra blankets and everything going on. So yeah, he is disgusting in many different ways.
He definitely made me this sound like, I know there's the argument where if you bring it to Hitler, the conversation's over. But hear me out.
Godwin.
He kind of gives that vibe of like a fascist that has so many personal issues, like self-hate and issues that they projected out. Like the whole story is he wants to get all these like weirdos out of his kingdom, but he is like an incredibly short man. Like he is a dwarf. Like he technically counts in the criteria for like kicking these fairy tale creatures out because he's so small. So it's really interesting. It kind of reminded me, there were like rumors that Hitler had Jewish family members, you know, so it made me think of that kind of mentality. Like he hates himself so much, he takes it out on everybody else.
He's like the villain from Moonraker that we just covered, where he wants the whole world to be supermodels, and it's like, well, man, you're not a 10.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't really know what to tell you.
Poor Michael Lonsdale. He's just catching strays for no good reason. But Lord Farquaad had access to a mirror, so he has no excuse. The Moonraker one was weird, though. It's like, hey.
I like when she pushes down the like wedding couple. She pushes Lord Farquaad down so he's the right height.
Yes.
Yeah, gave us lots of good jokes of, do you think he's compensating for something?
Yeah.
Yes. He's riding in his armor.
Yes.
Depicts him as being much taller.
I actually remember my dad took me to the theater to see this. And the part where he said, do you think he's compensating for something? I remember asking my dad what that meant. My dad was like, I'll tell you later.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't worry about it.
I remember like asking him about it. And I think I was like 11 or 12. So
that's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Lithgow said that's the height of comedy is doing something where the kids laugh and the adults laugh, and they're laughing for different reasons. And so he was big on the praise for this movie. And Shrek is a cameo fest. I think it gets deeper in the sequels, but we have so many different things. And one of my favorite lines is Snow White, that although she lives with 7 other men, she's not easy. Like dating. Like they've got a lot of those tear down the princess stereotypes. But did you guys have a favorite enchanted creature that appears in this film? Is there something that, it's something you loved as a child, and you're like, oh, I'm glad to see those, the 3 blind mice or Gingy.
The blind mice amused me a lot, especially the part where he's like, is that you, Gordo? And he goes, how did you know? Because they're blind. And then the 3 little pigs, they were German for some reason.
Yes.
I guess because the story is originally German or something, but
German sausage.
Yeah, it just made me laugh that they had a German accent.
Yes.
I think a scene that stuck out to me when I was a kid was when all of the fairy tale creatures first initially arrive, and then the 7 dwarfs push Snow White's coffin onto the table, and then so you clearly recognize that it's Snow White, and he's like, what are you doing? It's like, well, where else are we supposed to put her? The bed's taken. And he goes and runs into the bedroom. It's a big bad wolf. He's like, what?
I love when they put Snow White on the table, too. Like, no, dead broad off the table.
Right.
Yes. There's so many. And, like, they do the little 3 fairies that run into the tent at one point out of fear. And those are clearly, I think it's Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Yes, from Sleeping Beauty. And I remember as a kid having so much fun calling out everything that I recognized. And I still had fun doing that.
You're like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme from, what is it, Wolf of Wall Street, where he's just pointing out things.
Yeah. There's a lot to see in that first scene.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Big Bad Wolf. Like, he becomes a bigger thing in the sequel, but
yes.
I love the Big Bad Wolf in Grandma's pajamas, and his indignation. What? Yes.
What?
Yes, fantastic. The dwarves are singing together, even minor stuff like Tinkerbell. Pinocchio here we don't get a whole lot from, but he does.
In the second one, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, he does get his lie and his nose grows. So I like that they chalked him up to possessed children's toy. Like you're not a living thing, just possessed children's toy, and he gets tossed into the wagon. So yeah, so many great things about this movie as far as cameos. Our big twist, every story's got to have a good twist, is that Fiona, her true love's form is an ogre, and we hear a little self-hate. Can we talk about the messaging in this movie for a little bit? Because there's a lot in the story, even in the original books, about being true to oneself and having love for yourself and who you are. And Shrek, through all its warts and farts and everything else that comes through, is really trying to hammer that home. Did it succeed?
Yeah, I think it did. I mean, we all go through stages where maybe we don't feel comfortable with who we actually are. We're actually going through these like personality assessments at work. I tested one on Lizzy, but when you go through it, it's kind of a good, bad, ugly situation. And like you learn things about yourself, or you might have a propensity a certain way. And some people are really struggling with it. But I think obviously Fiona would agree, there's freedom in accepting who you are.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, we all go through struggling with that, what we think of ourselves to be or what we should be versus really how we're happiest. And so I think that's a really large message of the movie.
What am I working here with, Leah? You took the personality for Lizzy. Like, can you send me notes? What should I be aware of?
It just basically said that I lack patience, which is something I already knew about myself, and then it compares that to like what you require in order to achieve your day-to-day goals at your job, which my job is a stay-at-home mom, which patience is very much required for. Right. So I don't know what we're going to do about that yet. But
her patience shot like through the roof between the two. So we had a good laugh about that.
Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, everyone's got their flaws. Mine, they told me like I can be perceived as superficial. And I was like, well, thanks a lot. That's nice. But you know who you are, and you work with what you got.
Self-awareness is important. Absolutely. But I think what made this movie super cool is, especially during this particular time, because really thinking about putting yourself back into your 2001 self, that was the time when, social media wasn't around, so you could, totally make an argument for how it holds up today. But at least for me, that was the time of like Kate Moss and fashion magazines.
Yeah. Paris Hilton, real thin.
Exactly, where it was like there was only one definition of beauty, and if you didn't fit into that box, then you just were considered not to be beautiful. And I'm 5'1", so I'd be more on the Farquaad side of things, and but I had never really been exposed to, because you would see Disney movies of like love yourself, but Belle is, by beauty standards, very gorgeous, and all of the Disney princesses were. So it's easy to preach about self-love when you yourself are a knockout. And so it was really interesting to see it done completely different, where there's somebody talking, or not necessarily outwardly talking about it, but somebody learning a lesson right before you about self-love and embracing and leaning into themselves that wouldn't be traditionally considered beautiful. So I feel like that was really interesting to see at that particular time. And it truly holds up because, we're all, at the end of the day, we're all messy, and we all have, whether it's patience or anything else, like we've all got things that we've got to lean into. And I totally agree with Leah. There's a certain element of freedom when you just lean into who you are rather than trying to fight it.
There's an interesting line that Shrek says that I think kind of sums some of it up. So when he comes back and he overhears the conversation that he misconstrues, he comes back with flowers, and he's kind of talking to himself like, what am I going to say to Fiona? And he's like, I got you these flowers. They're pretty like you, but I still like you. Yeah, he says it kind of like
I noticed that, almost
Yeah.
being like, I like you in spite of the fact
Yeah.
that you're pretty. Yes.
Yeah.
which is like
Yes.
turns that on his head, right? Where we were growing up as 11, 12-year-old girls, like worrying constantly about looking pretty enough for a boy.
Yes, 100%.
Oh, see, that slow approach and the mumbling lines to each other, to himself with Shrek, I'm like, I feel this in my soul. I have been there. That's not a place I like to revisit, but that is an interesting perspective. That's something I never really considered, Lizzy, is just the Kate Moss. She had that famous line, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, which is, she's
I totally-
100% wrong. Like,
100%
Have you
wrong.
had lasagna before?
right,
Serious question.
cheesecake, I made caramel pretzels.
Ooh.
Yeah, right?
Unanimous excitement over that.
Yeah. I mean, that's helpful. This is why we like having women on the show, because males, we're just going to take this, we're not going to consider that perspective, most likely. So that's awesome to hear. That's great to hear. Loving yourself, and for me, it's finding the people that aren't going to reject you or run away from you, that like the warts and the differences. Like Donkey says, I didn't treat you like that. I didn't treat you like an ogre. And I think Shrek's looking at him like, oh, okay, this person might be my friend. And then Fiona as well, she gets to know him, and she has all the power. She's the beautiful princess. Yeah, she's got the dark secret, but she has the power in that relationship, even though Shrek's carrying her around. Like, she's the highest status of society. She could cast him out, and she doesn't. And I do think it's funny, with this movie, we wind up with two mascots. So Shrek becomes this huge, huge thing for DreamWorks. But weirdly, and I don't know if you guys remember this from your childhood, Gingy becomes the mascot for Walmart for a period of time. So
I do not remember that.
I don't remember that either. The little gingerbread man?
yes.
With one leg?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
That's crazy. No, I do not remember that at all. I mean, I'm not surprised by that because he was so beloved. I mean, that scene is iconic.
yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me, but no, I don't remember that.
Not my gumdrop
Yeah.
buttons.
Yes.
I remember we were watching that, and Brent was like, he just ripped his leg off. He's upset about his buttons. And I was like, I don't know.
When he stitches his leg back together, it's like
Yeah.
piped icing.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
That's
They have the glass of milk
Yes.
as part of the torture.
It's like milk ported.
such a dark scene. I mean, Farquaad's playing with his legs, like, oh, run away.
It's really terrible, but
Yeah.
you can laugh about it because it's a cookie.
Yeah,
A sentient cookie.
Yeah.
I guess, but this would have been a little bit interesting. This movie started out kind of like Mary Poppins, where it was going to be a live action and CGI hybrid. I have no idea how that would have worked.
Really like the Cats movie that blew
Oh,
up in everyone's face.
Yeah.
that is easily the scariest horror movie ever made. I stand by that. But
I think it was for the people that were in it because they didn't realize what was going to be done to them.
No.
yeah, Jeffrey Katzenberg, when he screened this for audiences, he said it looked terrible, it didn't work, it wasn't funny, and nobody liked it. So Pacific Data Images, they helped get Shrek to its computer animated look. They went, we make fun of the fact that Ants came out at the same time of Bug's Life, but what DreamWorks did is they hired all the people that made Ants and said, please help us make Shrek look good. And it winds up winning awards, so we get our CGI version of Shrek here, which works out much better. This movie actually, in addition to that idea, they tried doing a stop motion, so think Nightmare Before Christmas, which would have been an interesting experiment, but they decided, hey, it's really expensive and time consuming to do that. How about we just we abandon that pretty quickly? So a lot of multiverse Shreks. Maybe in some multiverse we've got a Mary Poppins version where Mike Myers is dressed in a terrifying ogre costume, a la Cat in the Hat. And we've got
Oh gosh.
Oh, I forgot about that.
yeah,
Such a bad
my
movie.
yeah, the movie that got all Dr. Seuss movies banned, like his family.
Stuff of nightmares.
For sure.
His family just said, you know what? No, we're done. Speaking of alternate universes, we have a lot of alternate casts, and I just love going down through most of this. Nicolas Cage was initially offered the role of Shrek. He turned it down, though, because he said he didn't want to look like an ogre, that they take a little bit of your face and your personality and inject that in the character, and he didn't want children looking at him as an ogre. This is a totally Nick Cage thing to say. Do you want Nick Cage in this role?
Absolutely not. He's the most vanilla, boring actor in the biz. I cannot stand Nicolas Cage, and it feels so good to say it.
Oh,
So good. I'm glad you finally got that off
I
your chest.
really did. I do not like Nicolas Cage.
Well, I feel like the Scottish accent, too, is like a touchstone of Shrek, and I'm trying to imagine Nicolas Cage doing one, and I'm hating it.
Bland and boring and vapid and just not it at all.
Tell us how you really feel about Nicolas Cage.
you are breaking my heart over here, and
Oh, no. You like the idea?
there is... Oh, no, I hate the idea here, but I like the idea of Lizzy being subjected to one of her fantasy football punishments, which is called In the Cage, where you have to watch 8 hours of Nicolas Cage movies.
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
The worst movie I've ever seen was Mandy. That Nicolas Cage
Oh, I
movie.
love Mandy.
Why?
That's fair. It is a weird movie.
He's like, I can't defend it.
I
just
have
like
tried so many times. I have tried at least 3 times to watch National Treasure, and I am not lying. Every single time I fall asleep. To this day, I don't know what the treasure is. I don't know what the treasure is.
Oh my
Is
goodness.
it pirates' booty? Is it like actual artifacts? I don't know, because I never make it. I always fall asleep right around the time where he like gets a replica of the Declaration and like swaps it out, and every single time I just conk out. It doesn't matter what time of day, doesn't matter anything. I cannot get into it. My body just wills itself to fall asleep.
To this day, I don't know what the National
I
Treasure
don't
is.
know
That's-
what.
Oh, no. Oh, no to all of
So we
this.
love John Lithgow. Hate
Yes,
Nicolas Cage.
I would watch National Treasure if it was anybody else.
If it was
but-
John Lithgow.
I would actually really like that.
Michael Lonsdale, you've been really hard on.
I would watch it even with him. Yes,
Oh my
I
goodness.
would.
Okay, well,
With
go.
those eyebrows.
You love horror. Go see Color Out of Space, and it's a weird horror movie, but go see Color Out of Space, and then let me know if that has sparked your love for Nicolas Cage. I will move on though, because there's a lot of other fun alternate castings. Bill Murray was going to play Shrek with Steve Martin as Donkey when Steven Spielberg was at the head of this. A very, very different movie, and I will say it's Mike Myers that injected this Scottish accent that we've all come to know and love. So it was going to be normal voices. It's Nick Cage wasn't going to attempt, I hope, to do some kind of weird accent. I think he was just going to be Nick Cage as an ogre. Same with Bill Murray. That's an interesting one. Famously, this was Chris Farley. Chris Farley was actually hired on. He'd recorded almost all the dialogue, and he passed this away right before completing the movie. His brother was asked if he could stand in for the rest of the lines. His brother just wasn't in a place to do it. So they call up Mike Myers. And Mike Myers doesn't want to do it. He's a friend of Chris Farley. He felt it was disrespectful. But eventually he takes the role. And Mike Myers, as we've covered in Wayne's World, is unpleasant to work with. He is very controlling with his characters. He says, I'll only do it if you do a complete script rewrite. And they do, and he does all of his lines. And then after they've recorded all his lines, he says, but what if I do it in a Scottish accent? And so they have to do it again. He had tried it in a Canadian accent and a slightly different version of his normal accent. That was what was recorded and finalized. The studio says it took another $4 million in animation. Had to redo everything. Mike Myers is consistently just, he's difficult to work with. But he's got a passion. He does his characters really, really well, and they're fun. I can't imagine. Can you guys imagine a Canadian Shrek?
No,
No.
they're too nice.
Sorry.
I mean, we're glad Mike Myers made that difficult, and he came up with the Scottish brogue for Shrek, because now it's an icon.
Yep.
I am too. I mean, he obviously had an instinct and it paid off.
Yeah,
Thanks for the extra $4 million.
Yeah.
Harkening back to our mystery men, Janine Garofalo was Princess Fiona. She was fired. She has never gotten a reason. She says she sounds like a man at times, so maybe that was the issue. This would have been her second movie in 2 years to feature all-stars, so I like that. Gonna keep going back to that. And Alan Rickman, I think he would have been an excellent, fun choice. He loves being the bad guy. He's great in Robin Hood. He was the choice to play Farquaad, but he ultimately chose to play Severus Snape. Wrong decision. Clearly Shrek. Shrek is love. Shrek is life. You know.
I don't know about that.
Can you imagine that butterfly effect, though, of because I mean, Alan Rickman has a stamp on the hearts of all Harry Potter fans and will forever. But can you imagine if he chose not to play that and then somebody else chose Snape and
Nicolas Cage?
Oh,
I would probably not watch Harry Potter. I mean, honestly, probably not. But I mean,
what a nightmare.
That would have changed the trajectory of his whole life. I mean, I think Shrek would have been cool, but selfishly, I'm glad that he chose Snape.
Oh, he was perfect as Snape. I know it's not a Harry Potter podcast, which I could do, but so like Alan Rickman just has this, like, he does have a villainous voice, but it's like cunning and sly and mean. Whereas like Farquaad was more like insecure, like little man syndrome, more like comedic and funny. And I'm not saying Alan Rickman wasn't funny. He was great in Galaxy Quest, and he was the sad robot in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which was funny, but he wasn't trying to be funny in that. But I mean,
he's
John
definitely
Lithgow, right move for Lord Farquaad for sure.
He's definitely the best part of Kevin Costner's Robin Hood, the American accent Robin Hood. We did cover that in podcast. Don't recommend the movie, but Alan Rickman's a lot of fun there. Another voice that feels like it should be here and it isn't is Robin Williams. He was supposed to have a part in this movie, but he famously had a falling out with Jeffrey Katzenberg while working for Disney. There's the story of, hey, you can go ahead and sign on for Aladdin, but we won't use your voice for other things. They completely lied to him and used his voice for promotions and other different things that he didn't sign on for. So Genie's voicing different commercials and hawking things. Robin Williams famously got upset with him and said, I will never work with you again. And our Lord Farquaad, Leah actually mentioned this before the podcast. So Leah, do you want to tell us who Lord Farquaad is reportedly based on?
Yeah, rumor has it, and I think this is related to, Lizzy was talking about the creators of Shrek. They originally had started making a Toy Story version that didn't go well, and they ended up leaving and creating DreamWorks and making Shrek. And rumor has it they were pretty salty about Disney, and in particular, who was at the helm at the time, Michael Eisner. So they fashioned Lord Farquaad after Michael Eisner.
I can see it.
Absolutely. This movie really is, in some ways, like a giant middle finger to Disney.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Oh, yeah. It's taking shots at their princesses and everything else.
I mean, he quite literally is reading Sleeping Beauty and then wipes himself with it at the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if that's not a metaphor to give Disney a big screw you, I don't know what is. Yeah,
and the Dulac song is "It's a Small World," like it's the same tune. So
honestly, Dulac looks like Disney World.
Yeah, a very empty Disney World. And last alternate casting, we have Jim Lang, which younger viewers may not know who that is. He was the host of The Dating Game from the 1960s, and Jimmy Fallon, they both voiced lines for Magic Mirror, and it's based on The Dating Game, but it eventually goes, as a lot of these roles do, to one of the artists. His name's Chris Miller, so one of the animators and artists. A lot of them are joining into the cast. We do get Jim Cummings, famously winning the Pooh, takes over a little bit for Scar from Jeremy Irons for the Be Prepared. He is the captain of the guards, but there aren't that many huge names in here. We kind of get that later on with the future Shrek movies. I think once we get the Shrek Empire here get rolling, we get more people on board. But this is a pretty small crew. This was actually our director here. His name is Andrew Adamson. This is his directorial debut, and he mostly gets Shrek to his name. Like, he's Shrek 1, 2, 3, Shrek Forever After, Puss in Boots, does do the Chronicles of Narnia as well. Not very much else. He gets like Cirque du Soleil and Mr. Pip. I have not seen these.
I mean, he came out of the scene pretty hot, so I mean, what else do you have to do?
Yeah, I will strongly accuse Vicky Jenson here. She also co-directs and she does Shrek, but she does Shark Tale, and that is something my wife loves, animated movies, and so I didn't know any better, so it's just like, okay, she loves animated movies and was not discriminating, so I took her to see Shark Tale, thinking, it's animated, she'll want to see it. That movie is terrible. So
Truly, like, so bad. And it was right on the heels of the Ben and Jen divorce with Angelina Jolie, so just out of that, you know, Angelina Jolie was like a Jezebel like fish, and just in and of itself I couldn't get into it. I'm team Jen all the way.
Yeah, it's I cannot weigh in heavily on that, but yes,
fish is pretty good phrase. I appreciate that.
Fish.
Yes, an official scientific species, Jezebel fish. But I will be on board with it is a terrible movie. We've danced around it, we've briefly talked about it. But I think something that makes Shrek stand out so much and what's so memorable is the soundtrack. So let's talk about the soundtrack a little bit. All-Star, it was a placeholder. And when they tested it and screened it with the audiences, they liked it so much that it was just kept in. Like, it's just one of those serendipity type moments. I'm a Believer was added in because they wanted Smash Mouth to have something fun and end on a just like a fun comedic trip at the end. And both of those songs became huge hits. It used oldies and pop music. On the Road Again, Try a Little Tenderness, Pina Colada song, It's a Small World. So what did you guys think of the soundtrack? Does it stand out? Is this something that lifts up the movie for you?
Oh, it's an incredible soundtrack. They've got great stuff. I mean, the score is too. They have the like da 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 da, which is very iconic. They use that throughout the movie, and they do it in a great way. But yeah, the songs that you recognize. I mean, we were watching it, and this led me to do kind of like a little deep dive on Hallelujah, because that was the first time I remember hearing it. Was that movie and that soundtrack, and it was a cover by Rufus Wainwright, I think. That story of that song is so interesting because it had existed for so long and not super successful until it was covered and used in this movie. And then there's like 300 different versions of it now.
Right. Yeah, we've got even Kate McKinnon in SNL doing a Hallelujah version.
Very haunting. Yes. Very haunting performance after Leonard Cohen died and Hillary Clinton lost the election.
Yes. She was dressed. I think she was cosplaying Hillary when she sang it. That song is so beautiful and so haunting. I always get confused though when it's on Christmas albums because I'm like, have you listened to the lyrics?
No. It's a very sad song.
It's a very, very sad song. But yes, the soundtrack in general is so good. I honestly think it completely elevates the entire movie, and it just makes it so much more memorable. And I think that kind of, again, you know, we're used to watching Disney movies that are more musicals where there's songs that the characters themselves are singing. I think it just goes back into the fun way that they were able to be kind of like the anti-Disney movie where instead of Shrek and Donkey singing together about going on the roads and having all these songs, instead they're just going to put in really popular songs that the audience can sing along with that just kind of carry you from one scene to another. The whole soundtrack is just brilliant.
I think our parents appreciated a lot of those songs too.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, Neil Diamond has a really fun story about this for I'm a Believer. He said a bunch of kids were singing it after seeing this movie, and he goes over and joins in, and he's like, 60 at the time, and they had no idea he was Neil Diamond. Now, they're just like, here's an old dude that for whatever reason knows the lyrics to this song and is singing in. So he had his little moment there. And moving on from our soundtrack, I think we have to get into it. We've danced around our movie superlatives. Best part of the show, part that we look forward to the most, starting with our MVP. Leah, can you hand out our first major award? Who is your MVP, director, actor, supporting actor for Shrek?
I sure can. I really wanted to pick something off the wall for this, but I know he was difficult, but I gotta hand it to Mike Myers for this. Like,
absolutely,
he was incredible.
Yeah, his vision definitely made Shrek the character we remember today.
It's so good.
Lizzy, is that your pick?
It's not my pick. I went a little rogue, but my MVP for this is Smash Mouth.
I put that for supporting actor.
I love that. MVP is Smash Mouth.
I literally wrote it right here.
That's so funny. I just think that Smash Mouth really, I think a part of why this movie was so epic is because of the song All Star. I just think when you think about Shrek, it's synonymous with thinking about Smash Mouth, and
it makes you want to kick doors open.
Yes, exactly. And it's to me, it is the perfect just duality of Shrek with Smash Mouth. So I gotta hand it to them for making the movie so epic.
Okay, I love that. Smash Mouth has been all over the place in our podcast. They've been in our Change One Thing for the Rat Race concert at the end. It's like, is this really necessary? So they have elevated themselves to MVP here.
Shout out Smash Mouth.
I love it. I love the boldness. Leah, I had to agree with you. Mike Myers, difficult as he can be, he is a visionary. Like, he knows what he wants, he gets what he wants, and his characters are so memorable. So there's love and passion behind the madness, and the end product is always something enjoyable, from Wayne's World to Austin Powers. He's just, we'll excuse Cat in the Hat and maybe Love Guru. I don't know. I might be able.
I think that too needs to be excused for sure.
He needs to come back to the Austin Powers franchise. I need to be able to forgive him a little bit. But we'll move on to our best supporting actor. Leah, I think you've said it.
Yeah, I mean, I had Smash Mouth written down for best supporting actor. I mean, it could also be MVP, but like Lizzy said, their contributions to the soundtrack, the echoes are still heard today. Again, I know every single word to All Star.
Oh, we all do, whether we want to or not.
I have to sing it if I hear it on the radio.
Agreed. You just can't help yourself. It's like those TikToks that they play where they'll play sounds and then the challenge is to not sing along.
Yeah.
And that Smash Mouth would be the one where we would all lose. You just cannot help yourself.
Just like the part, we all need a little change. Yeah. So Smash Mouth was mine.
Nice. Lizzy, who's your best supporting actor?
I put John Lithgow. I just think he's such a wonderful villain. I put, he's funny. He's unself-aware, which as a villain, it kind of adds to that comedic effect for him. He's so deeply insecure, and he's just so hilariously pathetic that even though he's doing things that are deplorable, because he's he's so pathetic as a person, it just makes it funny. And he's just a genius. I think only John Lithgow could really marry all of those things together and still come up with an awesome bad guy.
John Lithgow, we're asking you for an origin story for that villain. We would pay lots of money to see that movie.
Yes, that would be awesome.
He's a fan of the show, so I will give him a call.
Okay,
we'll have him up.
You call him up. You let him know.
I'm giving it to our big fan, John Lithgow, as well. He's almost giddy in this bad guy role, and I just love hearing and seeing him on screen. So John Lithgow, anytime, any place he shows up, love him. Hidden gem, Leah?
The sound designer for the dragon.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Go on.
nice.
Deep cuts.
Yeah, that's a deep cut.
That's a deep cut.
I listened to this podcast called 20,000 Hertz, and they talk about sound design. Really good podcast if you're into that. But they went into one where they talked to sound designers that did things like that. So they interviewed the person that did the dragon for Game of Thrones. And what she went through to create that sound was actually a lot of work. So that made me appreciate kind of the Foley artists, people that do the background noise, yes, and the sound designers for things like that. They put a lot of work and care into what they do. So
that's solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to make a recognizable sound for a creature that's never existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For real.
Make it sound like a dragon. Sure. Lizzy, who's your hidden gem?
I put Jim Cummings because I think the whole purpose of this movie was, again, as we've said before, to be the anti-hero, but I think also to give a subtle middle finger to Disney. And because Jim Cummings, he's Mr. Disney. He's in almost every single Disney movie and as some kind of voice. And so to have him also in this movie is kind of like this extra wink of haha, we got your guy.
He's Winnie the Pooh, yes.
Yes.
I had to go with Thelonious. He is the executioner. He's the one
Thelonious Monk.
Yes.
Pick number three.
Thelonious Monk was really funny. Yeah.
He's just my favorite background character. He doesn't really have lines, but he's got an awesome look, and his pantomime actions,
yes,
just fantastic, especially at the end at Farquaad's death. He kind of just quickly shifts sides, and he's like, okay, moving on with Shrek now. We're on this team, and he's piping the billows at the end to help pipe the organ for I'm a Believer. So, Thelonious, you're the man. Recast? This is kind of tough, but Leah, who are you recasting in this movie?
I want to say I struggled with this a lot. So I thought about it. I would recast Cameron Diaz.
Oh.
Yeah. Part of it, I think, is the writing. So maybe not her. But I think she could have brought a little bit more color to a lot of the dialogue and stuff she said. And I struggled for a long time. I was thinking about her contemporaries. Who could I recast that makes sense? And I struggled a lot. But I've been watching Big Mouth. And I think that Maya Rudolph actually would have made a pretty interesting Fiona.
Okay. But then you don't get the Sir Justin joke in Shrek 2.
Yeah, Sir Justin.
Oh, yeah.
That made me laugh when I saw that.
We can't lose that. I love Maya Rudolph, though. That's a great suggestion. Lizzy, who are you recasting?
So I thought about Robin Hood and how I would like to recast him because I love the idea I love the whole Robin Hood sequence. But I feel like, honestly, just having this annoying French guy I think they could have done so much more with that particular scene. And one thing that I love about Shrek is we've already talked so much about it. The movie itself is kind of meta. It's a very self-aware movie. So I think it would have been cool, instead of a stuffy Frenchman as Robin Hood, to have a current 2001 heartthrob as Robin Hood, to try to swift her off. And he's, kind of, Lord Farquaad isn't a heartthrob, so let's put somebody in who's like a Sir Justin, if you will.
Okay.
But I chose Freddie Prinze Jr.
Right.
Because this movie was kind of coming off of, I think She's All That was only 2 years old at the time. So in a lot of ways, he was probably still on a lot of Tiger Beat covers.
Posters on girls' walls.
Exactly. I'm probably on a lot of posters, myself included. And, I think that would have been a really cool scene if he was just like this complete heartthrob that you expect her to be wooed by, but instead just beats up.
Okay, Mr. Sarah Michelle Gellar himself, Freddie Prinze Jr.
Right.
I just wanted more distinct voices in this movie. I don't know that I'm singling anyone out, but maybe a princess or something, and give it to Fran Drescher just for comedic effect.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
I think it would just be funny if one of the princesses during the Mirror Mirror scene had Fran Drescher's voice. So
I actually thought about Megan Mullally for the princess, but I was
Okay.
like thinking of her as Karen and Will of Grace, and I was like, man, I don't know if we can make it through a whole movie.
The
Yeah,
high pitch, the
Yeah,
high
but
frequency.
she's very cackly.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah. I give her a minor role. Give her like a stepsister role in the future. Best shot, Leah.
So this movie was the first ever to win an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, and I think the scene, where they're escaping the dragon together really shows that. Just the animation itself, and then how they change the different angles. Like there's the part where you start to look from Shrek's point of view when he's going down this big branch and he hits himself in the crotch, and they did a lot of like panning and stuff, and it was just, if you think about how CGI was working back then, it was very impressive.
Yeah, there are a lot of beautiful shots in this. Lizzy, what'd you pick?
I put, there's a scene the night that they make camp, Fiona's sleeping in her little cave, her makeshift little hotel room, and Shrek and Donkey are talking, and the camera, or if you will, like the animation is meant to be where it's Shrek and Donkey, their backs are turned to you, and with this big moon in the background, and to me that just felt like a still that could be on the poster for the movie. It was just such a sweet little shot of the two of them, and in a lot of ways that's one of the first moments where Shrek has let his guard down, and so that scene in itself kind of has a lot of representation behind it as well. I thought they did great.
Yeah, straight out of the Lion King of you can see in the stars or the clouds.
That's right.
Like, there's your ancestor donkey, the small and annoying.
It's Gabby.
Yes, Gabby the donkey. For me, Shrek and Fiona, when they're dining at their respective tables, it's after they've separated, there's the misunderstanding, and it just kind of spins and it fades out and shows Fiona at the right side of this proper table, and then it fades into Shrek's little hovel with him at the left side, and it just goes back and forth, fading between the two. And it really does a great job of kind of conveying how miserable they both are with their decisions. So I thought that was particularly beautiful. There are a couple, even the slow panning shot to Donkey looking inside of Shrek's home. Like, we don't know that it's Donkey at first, but there's the fire and Shrek's eating, and it pulls back. And it's this very long shot. There's a ton of good early work for a movie that struggled to find its footing. So kudos to them for this. Best scene, Leah.
I'm sounding such a child. But the part that got like a huge laugh for me was when Shrek's trying to save Donkey from the dragon, and he's going, "That's my tail, that's my personal tail," and he kind of falls, and she's going in for a kiss, and he falls and his pants fall up, and she like kisses him on the butt. I don't know why. That one got me pretty good. So I'm gonna give that a shout out right here.
That is unwanted physical contact.
That whole scene was done so well. There's clearly like the smog influence. There's a whole bunch of gold surrounding. I had to look at release dates of things because it looks like they're in the mines of Moria. Like, yeah. It came out afterwards, so Shrek didn't steal it. They just got very...
No, Lord of the Rings stole it from them.
Right, yeah. That's Peter Jackson, Shrek thief. So, we're on to you. Lizzy, what's your best
I
scene?
put the interrogation scene between Farquaad and the gingerbread man. To me, that's just like the most iconic scene from the movie where, it's like, where are they? He's like, fine, I'll tell you. Do you know the Muffin Man?
The Muffin Man?
The Muffin Man!
Yes, I know the Muffin Man.
It's just so funny, and it's hilarious how they're able to weave in a fairy tale because that conversation. He's like, "Oh yeah, who lives on Drury Lane?" And
right.
So there's just such a funniness to the fact that you can understand and you're in on the joke, and he's you said earlier he's playing with his legs, so it's also really dark, but you can laugh at it because it's a cookie. So it's I thought that scene was iconic.
That is fantastic. Yeah, that whole, it's almost like an Abbott and Costello bit for the Muffin Man. For me, I'm a wrestling fan, there was actually a lot of care that went into the Champions Challenge at Farquaad's court. The tag team action is stunningly great, and there's this, what puts the cherry on top for me is there's an old lady that starts screaming to get the chairs. And if, in certain wrestling events this happens, it's usually get the tables, but there's an old lady saying get the chair, which is fantastic because he then gets a chair and hits them. The whole scene just leaves me with a big smile. So stupid action scene, throwaway scene, but stuff like that. It shows there's a little care and thought even for meaningless throwaway scenes. So love it. Best wardrobe or makeup moment in a CGI movie, Leah.
I struggled with this just because it was animated, but I guess this could go for many movies where there's shape shifting. How do her dresses still fit?
Oh, yes.
Where do I get one?
She-Hulk's Taylor.
Kind of thing.
I watched that movie. That was a charming movie. I was surprised.
It's charming. It's a great word for it. Yes.
Yeah, but this was definitely She-Hulk's Taylor. So yeah. Lizzy?
I put the Big Bad Wolf's grandma outfit because
Excellent.
I think that scene arguably wouldn't have been funny had it not been for that.
Yeah, if he wasn't in the bonnet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the fact that he decides to wear that whole just like, what? It's so funny. And I remember my brother and I just cackling over that when we were kids. We thought it was absolutely hilarious to see him dressed up like a grandma. And like you said, they kind of redo that in the second one. You know, the prince he's too late, but he's going to the highest room in the tallest tower thinking Fiona is going to be there. And again, it's the wolf with the same, like, what? It's just such a funny bit.
Yeah, I cannot get enough of the Big Bad Wolf. For me, I went with a very simple touch. It's Genji's candy cane.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
He hobbles in and he does the Tiny Tim. God bless us, everyone. And it's a fun addition, and you're happy to see Genji again. It's like it's gonna work out for him, and he's gonna be.
How did he get out of that trash can? That's what I want to know.
Somebody had to have taken.
Yeah, someone had to have grabbed him out.
Had some pity on him.
Yeah, Felonious
Monk.
Clearly, yes, that was definitely him.
Helped him out. Like they went too far. Change one thing in this movie. Leah, what are you changing?
So this is kind of nitpicky, but a lot, like a big portion of the story, and this happens a lot, hinges on this gross miscommunication between the two characters, where if they had like said just one more thing to each other, I don't know what I would change it to, but it often feels to me like lazy writing.
That's every romantic comedy.
Yes. It's every romantic comedy, and it just is kind of dumb because like I'm not gonna storm off in real life and be like I'm not gonna be like I can't believe you think I'm ugly, you know, and they're like, wait, what do you mean? I don't think you're ugly, you know.
Yes.
So they don't. It just feels a little lazy writing, but obviously they had to get a movie into an hour and a half, so I'm gonna let it go.
Yeah.
You realize how confrontational you are when you watch people behave that way, because you're like, you hear that conversation, you wouldn't like walk away and sulk. You'd knock on the door and you'd be like, what's up?
Yeah.
You got something to say?
Yeah. Let's talk about my face.
Yeah. And then right then and there, you'd see her as an ogre and like problem solved.
I know, it'd be a very short movie.
Yeah.
Lizzy, what are you changing?
I just wanted more Lord Farquaad. I would have loved if they showed just because again, I think I had touched on this a little bit. You know, you just don't get enough of him to really understand what he's about, other than he's just like this little insecure man. And I would have loved to see kind of more pieces of that, because he's just such a delicious character and he's so funny. And I just would have loved to do more origins and backgrounds of Farquaad.
Again, John Lithgow, if you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're ready for the villain origin story.
They really should make a prequel all called Farquaad on how he came over.
Little Farquaads.
Yeah, little Farquaads and all of how he came to be a lord, how he came to power.
I love the lowercase letter F as his emblem.
Yes.
Becoming Farquaad.
Yes. For me, I talked about some of the things that don't age very well. It's very minor, but the stupid freeze frame Matrix style shot they do for Fiona.
Oh, yeah.
Like, when we saw this movie, it was fresh off The Matrix, and you're like, oh, that's kind of fun, The Matrix, but it's done to death now. And otherwise, the fight scene's actually pretty great. We talk about Robin Hood probably dying. Like, just speed up the jump kick between the two instead of doing the stupid freeze frame tilt camera thing. Just have it be a regular jump kick and kicking them and move on with the action. Keep it rolling. Don't need to parody The Matrix.
I agree.
So, dumb change, but nevertheless. Best quote. So many great ones. Leah, what did you choose?
I mean, I thought about the ogres are like onions and the parfait thing and the muffin man. I mean, so much of it's very quotable. Yeah, but everyone who listens to this podcast, they're going to think I'm an absolute child. But the thing that I thought was funny was when they're approaching the castle and they could smell the sulfur, Donkey goes like, ooh, Shrek, you're going to have to warn me before you crack one off. My mouth was open and everything. And I laughed an unreasonable amount at that. And Brent looked at me and he was like, really, that's the first thing you laughed out loud at? And I'm like, yeah, sorry, it was funny.
It never stops being funny. That's fine.
Flatulence is funny. Let's just
My mouth was open and everything.
Blazing Saddles will never stop being funny.
It's time that we all just admit it and stop trying to be so grown up. My best quote was right before the duel, Lord Farquaad is announcing to the people, kind of preparing everybody for the duel. And at the very end, he goes, "Some of you may die, but that is the sacrifice I am willing to make."
Yes.
Husband and I laughed out loud, like, could not stop.
That sums him up.
It is so great.
I love that line so much, and you stole mine.
Aww.
But that's fine because that's the correct answer. But I am going to go with Gingy then, where he's being threatened in the torture scene, and Farquaad says, "Tell me, where are the others?" And Gingy just goes, "Eat me!" And it's just a fantastic. There are so many great ones here. I just love even simple lines from Donkey where he's like, "Let's do it again," for the dual act song when they get their...
The picture of their faces when the song's over, the complete perplexion on their faces is so good.
But Shrek is like kind of like, what am I watching? And Donkey is like just so amazed and delighted and like, it's so great. Honestly, rewatching this as a parent now, you can kind of see the relationship that like Shrek has to Donkey sometimes can be, and this is, part of my test that Leah gave me where the patience comes in. It's like sometimes I feel that where it's like your kids, like, let's do it again. You're like, no. We're going to move on.
Right. Your kids insult you and you point it out, and then they're like, "That's a nice boulder you got there. I love that boulder."
That's a nice boulder.
Yes.
Right. Well, we've handed out our rewards. It is time. 0 to 5 stars, half-star increments. We're going to rate 2001 Shrek. Leah, we'll start with you. What are you giving Shrek?
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5.
Like, rewatchability, anytime. Incredible movie. Hilarious. We just recounted just quotes from the movie and we're cracking up. Like, a great movie.
Absolutely. Lizzy?
So this is the first time I've done this. I'm going to give 5 out of 5 as well. Wow. I think it is virtually a perfect movie, and even thinking about this movie makes me laugh, and it has, like Leah said, she said it perfectly. It's rewatchable, it's fun, it's heartwarming, it's nostalgic, and honestly today, like, it holds up. There's memes. I think the one meme that I think is the funniest is there's a meme of Shrek with the caption of, "Now that I'm an adult, I can appreciate why Shrek wanted to live alone."
Yes.
Like, it really still has a placeholder in our pop culture zeitgeist. It's perfection.
Yeah, Shrek has definitely become a meme. Okay, 2 5 stars. Pressure's on me. This movie, it's weird, and maybe it means that I'm the ogre in my own relationship, but my wife and I kind of bonded over Shrek movies when we first started dating. Up until then, like I said, I really wasn't a big animated movie guy. This was kind of my gateway drug. From Shrek 2, Accidentally in Love, it's weirdly meaningful to us. Our story it was a complete accident. It worked out. So here is my heavily biased 5 stars, giving it a 5-star sweep. So,
consensus across the board.
Is this the first time this has ever happened on Retro Movie Roundtable? Like 5 out of 5 all across the board?
Oh no. My dealer's choice of Beauty and the Beast with 2 other men swept 5 stars. So I was very proud of Russell and Brian for that.
That's fair, though.
That is fair.
That is a work of art, that movie.
It is. I was very scared. Brian Fry hates animated movies, but even he has to bow down to Beauty and the Beast and say it's a perfect movie. But yeah, this is rare. I love it. It's a great movie. Leah, thank you for bringing it up, shortlisting it. I can release my grudge against Russell. That is huge. That's like 2+ years of anger, all released through Smash Mouth All-Star. So within the first somebody, it was gone. So Russell's grateful.
I'm happy I could facilitate the emotional healing that you needed.
Yes, there is. He is the donkey to my Shrek. So Lizzy, do you want us to help me pick a movie for next time?
Let's do it.
Right, you are a good person for this. It's time to get romantic, and for our romance, we are going back to the 40s. These are all romantic comedies. The descriptions on IMDb do not sound funny at all, but they are romantic comedies. We're going to start with To Be or Not to Be from 1942. During the Nazi occupation of Poland, an acting troupe becomes embroiled in a Polish soldier's efforts to track down a German spy. Again, romantic comedy. Option 2, The Shop Around the Corner from 1940. 2 employees at a gift shop can barely stand each other without realizing that they are falling in love through the posts as each other's anonymous pen pal. Option 3, His Girl Friday from 1940. A newspaper editor uses every trick in the book to keep his ace reporter ex-wife from remarrying.
All right, so I think I'm going to go with the movie that has some degrees of separation from one of my favorite 90s rom-coms, You've Got Mail. It's got to be The Shop Around the Corner.
Okay. All right, we are heading back, taking the way back, over 80 years, so can't wait. Shop Around the Corner, 1940. Check it out, and then join us next week for the episode. Thank you, Leah. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Lizzy. And thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you guys to reach out. We want to hear from you. Please subscribe, rate, review us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. And remember, producing and providing this podcast is fun, but it is not free, so we invite you to support the show at our Patreon page, patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. Any contribution is very, very much appreciated. It goes towards making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Lizzy?
Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming.